Hello and welcome to The Society with Barrister Fatma Shaheen at PTV World. We see young people and children emerging as successful social, political as well as economic actors not only in Pakistan but world over, and bringing about positive social and community change. In this regard, it's very important to mention at the outset that Pakistan is considered to be the fifth largest young country in the world, and it has a population of more than 60% of young persons. Now, keeping these statistics in mind, it is very important for us to ask the very relevant and very pertinent question, which is that how then can young people in Pakistan translate their demographic power into substantial social progress? And this is exactly what we'll be talking about in our today's show. We'll be talking about how youth activism has evolved over a period of time in the Pakistani society, how it has been redefined in the COVID-19 as well as in the social media era, and what more can be done in order to maximize and to utilize it fully. This and much more to follow, and to do that, let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for the show today is Hassan Kamal Wattu, who's an activist, he's a writer, and he's also the co-founder of the digital media startup. Assalamu alaikum, Hassan, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. My second panelist for the show today is Ms. Maida Ali, who's an educationist alongside being a social activist. Assalamu alaikum, Jeen, welcome to the show.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're most welcome. And via Zoom, we'll be joined by Ms. Mariam Khan, who's a member of the National Youth Assembly, alongside being the ambassador at Democratic Youth Association, and she also hosts her own YouTube talk show. Assalamu alaikum, Mariam, and welcome to the show.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. Mariam, I would like to start the show with you. You know, in this era where a lot of young Pakistani women, they complain that, you know, the digital and the online space for them has shrunk. You're very successfully conducting this, you know, talk show in online spaces, on YouTube particularly. So tell us about the social impact that this, you know, YouTube show has actually had on other young persons like yourself in the Pakistani society.
Okay, so thank you for having me. Once again, I would like to thank you. So being a millennial, social media, has made a huge impact on my life, just like million others. During my college days, I realized the potential of social media and the impacts, it can have to improve the lives of vulnerable sections of the society. You see, civil society organizations have successfully utilized the social media to further the cause of uplifting downtrodden sections of the society. So similarly, at a very young age, I also pledged to use the social media to reflect the plight of poor people and to strive to highlight their problems with an aim to assist the policy.
You're talking about the vulnerable segments of the society, Mariam, but what vulnerable segments? Because when we talk about the marginalized community in the Pakistani society, it is quite wide.
Okay, so I in my YouTube channel discuss the social and political and strategic issues, and I can say with confidence that my voice is being heard in the higher echelons of the government, and that I am pleased that at least I'm able to reflect the real social economic issue of the country, which I hope are going to make a difference in future.
Right. And what kind of social issues per se are you raising, so to speak? Like what kind of content are you creating? Is it more women rights based? Is it raising issues of child related to children and their rights? Or is it more minority rights based? Tell us about the content that you're producing that way.
Okay, so as you know, the contemporary media industries, it relies heavily on the sensationalism to attract the viewership. So this has led to the dictation and the standards of journalism in Pakistan as well as in the immediate vicinity, such as India. So now this creates an opportunity for the newcomers by avoiding becoming a part of this sensationalism and highlighting the real social issue prevalent in the society. So this in itself brings the originality, which is the basic tenet of journalism and social responsibility of the media. So I always strive to discuss the least covered topics such as the rights of children and rights of minorities, elderly people, and animals also. So I, along with one of my colleagues, have started a YouTube channel named as the Information Corridor, and it is one of the few English YouTube channels which talk on the foreign policy and the strategic issues. Its
So
viewership, though, is
basically, you're just not addressing the social issues, you've also, addressing political issues that way. And I think in this regard, animal rights is one issue we must all actually talk about, because I generally feel, I don't know whether two of you would agree with me on this, that it is one topic which doesn't unfortunately get that much screen space in Pakistan at least. But, coming to you, I understand the fact that, you're a youth activist and you're running this a very interesting digital media startup, so to speak. Tell us about your initiatives when it comes to, actually propagating youth activism in Pakistan.
Well, firstly, thank you very much for that resounding welcome, Fatma. I am a huge believer in taking very small steps to create some sort of semblance of change that adds up in the long term. So the way that myself and my partners in this very small initiative did that was that when COVID-19 happened, we were all studying in different parts of the world. And with that, we were thrust back into Pakistan and with quite a lot of free time and wondering what to do with it. So myself and my two friends, two brilliant individuals, brilliant colleagues as well, brilliant human beings, Mustafa and Usman, they got together with the idea that we could create some sort of digital media platform where the topics that, like you mentioned earlier, that the current mainstream media was not addressing at all. We could bring that into focus and just see what we could make of it.
And I think, Hassan, in your case, it was like a boy initiative, but I see a lot of women also coming up with such YouTube channels. But coming to you, since you've mentioned that you started this basically initiative during COVID time, so tell us about the issues that you are talking, which are different from mainstream media.
Well, there's a range of them, because as we started out, the platform evolved. We started out from what we were passionate about, things like students' rights, things like the visually impaired community in Pakistan, things like the marginalized communities, things like the transgender community in Pakistan, a range of different societal-based issues that young people were passionate about, but mainstream media was not covering. So we found that by creating that initiative ourselves and going about and getting the ball rolling on what we wanted to do, we'd see where it went from there. And the platform went beyond what we could have imagined, in that we were able to reach reach an audience that was filled not just with the normal people that we knew and were surrounded with in Pakistan.
How do you feel education can be used to bring about social reform, especially when it comes to young persons like yourself?
Right. So as the son of somebody who's been working for over 15 years in the field of rural education and female education in particular, I'm very proud of the work my mother has done for education all her life. I've been passionate about girls' education for as long as I can remember. And it's something that I'd like to do further in my life as well. But at the same time, as a man, I have some beliefs about the role that men should play in women's rights issues, which is very particularly important in these times, which is to not speak over women, but to amplify their voices, stand in solidarity, and not take space and ground that is theirs, and they are very able and talented and in the position to take for themselves. So the way that I believe men should go about this is to stand in firm and unflinching solidarity, but not to take space that is not theirs to take.
Of
That's
course,
the way we would
because when we talk about, enforcement of any right per se, be it legal, be it constitutional, or even for that matter, your basic rights of being a citizen in any country, I think men need to respect that. And same goes to women, when men's rights are in question. But coming to you, since you are an educationist yourself, Maida, what barriers do you feel exist in the Pakistani society, whether they are in the school system, whether they are outside the school system, which actually hinder women's access to education? Because you see, we have to take this whole debate in its complete context. If you don't educate women, you can't expect them to come forward and be part of the political process, or just be part of the mainstream, or be a youth activist per se.
Yeah, so I think the number one barrier in my point of view, and a lot of research also kind of gives support to it as well, is the health or hygiene issue in the schools. And one of the things we really need to focus on is that if our girls do not graduate from school, let's say elementary school or primary school, they are not going to end up in college or university.
Right.
So it's kind of a never-ending loop the girls of Pakistan are kind of stuck in. And
I think I was about to add to that. I think for me at least, I think the more glaring and the more pressing factor is social and cultural norms, especially when it comes to, rural education of females as well that way. Because, know, in a society where it just doesn't seem right, or people just don't, you know, prioritize girls' education,
Yeah.
how can you actually, you know, expect girls to be educated?
Yeah.
You know, that's the first and foremost thing. You can still send girls to school, you know, if the circumstances are not so, you know, clean and bright, if the schools are not so amazingly spick and span, but you know, I think the most important impediment here is overcoming that mindset which actually feels that, you know, prioritizing girls' education is not a big thing. So
Yeah.
how do you feel can we address that?
First of all, and the very important thing is to create awareness through different campaigns and through going back to the rural areas, going back to the roots and everything. And I would like to draw the answer for this question from my personal experience. My father is from a very small village from Potoar Plateau, and we have been visiting our village every now and then. What I see in that particular setting is that girls do not have facilities inside their district, and they have to go and travel so far that the parents think that, okay, that's it. You don't need to travel that far. Let's just be at home, help us out in the domestic chores and everything, and that's the end of it. So I think we really need to place, this is a strategy we call placing a mirror in front of someone. So we really need to place a mirror in front of all the parents, all the siblings, all the cousins, aunties, uncles, and show them that what they're doing to the young girls by stopping them from getting that education, even if that's 50 or 100 kilometers away.
Of course, and I think there are many more factors which need to be considered, just not distance, infrastructure, lack of financial resources, so many other things which you need to consider that way, on which I'll come to you, Mariam. You know, we've generally spoken about the barriers to girls' education and how in that, you know, in itself can be a hindrance to youth activism. But I think in this regard, we must also talk about the role of media and social media, so to speak, especially when it comes to women's political participation. So how do you see the role of social media evolving to, you know, allow that woman to have that access to the political mainstream?
Okay, so the surge of youth-inspired activism is not new. Youth activism has a rich history, including the organizing in the 1960s civil rights movement, and in groups such as the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Little Rock Nine, and more recently the Parkland Teens and the Greta Thunderbird. While social media presents a shift in the medium through which youth do activism, the attitudes have remained constant through generations. So while there's a plenty of precedent for youth-led movements throughout history, the social media age has changed everything for youth activists. I think this is a change for the better because the organizing survey on social media provides opportunity to the traditional institute gatekeepers, which assists with fundraising either via crowdfunding or platforms different platforms like app Venmo, or instead of using the platforms that don't require adults like TikTok or Instagram organizing structures.
Right, Mariam, your point is noted. But coming to you, Hassan, do you not feel that, you know, social media is a double-edged sword, whereas there's no denying to the fact that it has given that boost to youth activism per se, it does come with its disadvantages as well?
Absolutely. I definitely think social media is a double-edged sword, but perhaps not for the reasons that most people think it is. We know of all the positive things it's done. We know it's connected people. We know it's allowed for activism to reach people. We know it's allowed people to breach authoritarian governments. So across the world, it's been beneficial for countries world over.
Of course.
What we don't see often, however, is recent reports that have indicated that social media platforms like Facebook, like Instagram, have profited off of divisiveness.
Like Twitter.
Twitter especially, have
That has brought
incentivized hatred.
so much, you know, social change.
Absolutely.
Especially, and not only nationally, you see where Black Lives Matters and Lives Matter, and then the Me Too movement. I think the whole contours of youth activism per se, they have been redefined because of social media. I think where people, young people like yourself, where you earlier used to go out, you know, physically and, you know, physically do those sit-ins or protests. Now all you need is a good, you know, internet connection, basically, and just go live.
Often the things that we ran away from mainstream media for, we've come back to social media and found those exact same things lying there waiting for us. Things like divisiveness, things like inflammation, things like people spreading hate speech without any regulation whatsoever. So being cognizant of these things and recognizing where the social media is profiting off of your hatred and your anger is very necessary to navigate times moving forward. But the answer to that is not restriction, it is reasonable common sense regulation on an
And
international
I
level.
think that that's a very aptly put answer, because I think a regulation is something which needs to stem from within. It has to be self-regulation, both at the end of the person who is using that space, and then of course the viewer themselves too. That because if you know that you're receiving some fake news, the least you can do is not forward it that way. So I think the principle goes back to self-regulation, on which I'll take you on board. I think he's raised very valid points, Hassan. When we consider the role of social media in promoting youth activism, it has to be very holistic that way. So how do you feel can this be properly streamlined? Because we have seen instances where student protests, where protests by young people, they have become violent as well.
So I truly believe everything starts in the early years in the classroom. I know that I'm trying to pitch in that kind of educationist point of view over here, and then attaching it to youth activism as well. So in the very early years, we need to teach our children how to regulate their cognition. We call it cognition plus metacognition as well, and then we move forward from there. There's a very famous philosopher, Socrates. He had this method of Socratic questioning, which is basically asking questions such as how, why, and what, with whatever information you are receiving or instruction you are receiving. And I think it kind of loops back to what Mr. Hassan has over here said, that you need to logically kind of streamline everything, basically analyze everything, and I think that's how we can pick it up.
In this regard, you again made a very valid recommendation, but I think in this regard, it's the society's role, because you just can't place, I think, the entire brunt on young people per se, whereas of course they have that responsibility to peacefully protest and do it in a way, which doesn't hurt the dignity and it doesn't hurt, the self-respect of other persons out there, whether this is, through traditional means or online means. I think parents and teachers and the society at large, they also need to be more respectful of the space of young people, because I at least feel as a Pakistani woman that our parents, at least to that matter, they are still dismissive of youth activism per se.
They are, because it's not their normal, and it's basically said that what's normal for a spider is chaos for a fly. So it's kind of like we need to normalize everything around us when it comes to putting forth your point peacefully. And I think one of the things we are missing right now in our society is we do not know how to receive feedback and how to critique or how to give feedback.
Right, Maida, but coming to you, I think, Mariam, a very pertinent question which we must address in this regard is also the fact that, we are living through a pandemic for some time now. So how do you feel as a young person in Pakistan? How has COVID-19 impacted or influenced the whole contours of youth activism in Pakistan during this COVID-19 era?
Yes, exactly. The young people are the ones who have experienced the brunt of the pandemic. Pandemics that Ramos they suffered because of it worldwide. The young segments of the society have contributed at large for keeping the economic activity at bay by working online from home. So moreover, they evolved a strategy by serving the effects of COVID-19 in educational field, medical field, and many other compulsory service departments. I would like to give a few examples, such as you can take an example of Corona Recovery Warrior, and there was a girl who won an award as she helped poor a lot during the peak when COVID was at peak.
Mariam, I think you've really pointed out the real work that young people are doing this way, but we must also make mention of other different initiatives that they are doing. And I think in this way, there have been so many young individuals out there who've been introducing, the whole concept of e-health, and then also giving back to the society by helping out poor and basically being the driving force in all these ration drives. So I think these are just few examples that we've listed that way. But tell us about your own work, especially when it comes to working as an active member of the National Youth Assembly. What all have you people done during the COVID-19?
Okay, so first of all, I would like to explain what National Youth Assembly actually do. National Youth Assembly basically provides an equal opportunities for youth to become a member and grow their professional skills related to political growth. And for this purpose, National Youth Assembly arrange a mock assembly sessions order sessions and invite different political and influential personalities to enhance exposures. And for learning, as National Youth Assembly uses digital channels and also provides a 16 GB USB full of books and articles in English and in Urdu, both the language as well. And during the pandemic, I would like to tell you that National Youth Assembly focused and tried to motivate youth regarding e-learning system, and it also provided people with different digital channels and access to the digital channels to learn and utilize their in their spare time time in a better way. Furthermore, it gives a spark to young generation, and we can find the future leadership from this venture. And like National Youth Assembly is also playing its essential role to counter hybrid warfare against Pakistan on social media, and it also defending the ideological borders of the state.
Right, Mariam, your point is noted, but coming to you, Hassan, she's generally told us about the work of the National Youth Assembly this way and, the policy reform that they are bringing in. But, do you not feel that when we talk about youth activism, the definition of youth activism should just not embrace, having all these awareness campaigns, which in their own right are very good, of course, because they start these very important conversations, but it should also extend to bringing about substantial change in the form of, maybe reforming institutions or for that matter, improving policy?
Absolutely. So first of all, I'm a huge believer in speaking ideas into existence.
Right.
So what that entails is that perhaps bringing up a difficult topic at first, identifying a problem, is extremely important to ensuring that that problem is addressed to its conclusive end. Just a few quick examples to illustrate that point.
Please.
When I was studying at SOAS University of London, I was working in the Law Society at the time. We found out that an alumni of ours had been illegally imprisoned by a dictatorship in Egypt. Now, that's something that's seemingly impossible to overcome. How are students, 20-year-old kids sitting in a university in the UK, going to do anything about an Egyptian dictator who decided to imprison a human rights activist? But what we did, however, was we got in contact with that individual's wife. His name was Karim Inara. We got in touch with his organization, the Institute of Protection of Journalists. And they all together, they started a petition which we initiated along with the help of EIPR and all of those organizations working together.
And did you manage to get him out?
Absolutely. The petition got over 100,000 signatures.
Amazing.
We got videos of support from Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party at the time.
So you
Bernie
see, so
Sanders.
that is the power of social media. When we talk about youth activism, you can't just miss the fact that, how it has amplified this whole movement of youth activism per se. I think it's very good that you've pointed this out, but since you've also had the benefit of, studying abroad, when you make a comparison, Hassan, like youth activism as it is in the Western world to what it is here in our Pakistani society, how do you compare and contrast the both?
Precisely. I believe the comparison to be made there is one of being taken seriously and not being taken seriously. In the United Kingdom, the fact that the students of a law society at a university there could initiate a campaign that could email the Foreign Office there, get a response, and get taken seriously by the relevant government departments is indicative that the youth is not forsaken in that society. Over here, we simply do not see that. We may have some tokenistic initiatives here and there to give the youth some representation, but what we need, and a constructive advice I would give moving forward, is institutional changes that provide the youth with a voice in political representation.
That is exactly what I said, that awareness campaigns and sensitizing people, sensitizing masses, so to speak, is the first step, because as we all know, of course it can't go so far, and we do know that social media per se has that power. You can bring people accountable, you can hold them accountable that way, and social media, even in Pakistan, we've seen it has had that impact even in improving our justice system, so to speak. So I think in that way, policy, institution, administration of justice, all of them have been influenced one way or the other by activism.
And just a quick example, sorry, before we move forward, about how such activist campaigns can influence real government reforms is the way that our media platform, a small show that we did with a friend of mine, his name is Muhammad Ali, he's a visually impaired activist. The things that he had to say about the differently abled community in Pakistan were so powerful that we found out that they reached the Ministry of Human Rights in Islamabad. And Dr. Shireen Mazari, I salute her for this initiative. She got in touch with Ali, and through that program, having seen the work that we at 20 years old had come up with, the fact that that had reached a government minister, and another government minister who's doing brilliant initiative that I'd also like to name, who was kind enough to sit down with us for an interview, Mr. Shafqat Mahmood, sat down, and the fact that young people got the chance to ask questions from the
That
Federal
was only
Minister
because
for
of,
Education.
your digital media startup and social
Precisely.
media, so to speak, at the
Precisely.
end. And I think in this regard, we must also talk about the fact that, when we talk about social activism, when we talk about, media, we must also talk about, the impact of globalization as it is on, this whole movement. Because, now things have completely changed because of globalization. So how would you, want to comment on this, and how would you feel that, this is a change for the better?
I think before globalization in general, and even the COVID-19 era as well, we were going on an individual paths. Everybody had their own story, everybody had their own baggage, past, future, present. So it was very individual. With the help of this globalization and with the help of this, far-reaching technology, now we are all connected. So I can easily relate to someone who has a similar experience to me, living in Jakarta, for example. And Jakarta is so many miles away from here. So this is something like it's bringing us together in a harmony, and it's truly, how do I say this?
I think that just not bringing us together, I would want to add to this. I think it gives it more impact, and of course,
it does.
it
Strength.
makes the exactly the movement more strong. Like, something which we were earlier discussing as well, like the movement of Black Lives Matters, and then the Me Too movement, which gained so much momentum world over. Although it was started in one part of the world, but then how it actually became viral that way. But I think in this regard, we must also have your view on the fact that we've generally been talking about youth activism, how education can actually be that social catalyst for youth activism as well, because of course you can't expect people who are uneducated, who don't know about their rights, to come forward and advocate for other people's rights that way. But they say that education is that medium which can actually initiate this process. How do we sustain it?
So the answer is ripple effect, and by ripple effect I basically mean that our young activists and our youth should start forming bonds with the up and coming people, and then more people, and reach out to more people. So it's kind of like one person starts the change, or at least talks about the change, and then gathers more people and gathers more people and gather more people, and that the way it happens is that everybody kind of levels up on the same level, irrespective of their social economic background, their political viewpoints and everything, and everybody kind of converges to a point.
Community engagement at the end of the day, basically.
And I would really like to mention over here, and this was an analysis I was discussing with one of my friends, was that BLM, Black Lives Matter, why did it pick up so much momentum during COVID? Was because everybody was on the same level, everybody was hit by the same pandemic. We were kind of in the same ocean, it was very tumultuous, and it was very wavy and everything, and that's why people kind of decided or thought that we really need to stand up for something we believe in. And I really truly hope
I think
that
same is the case with the Me Too movement as well, because once that trend started, so many women, so I think social media has that momentum,
it does,
and it has that, of course, power to actually lay down the basically foundations for so many social justice movements, and not only lay down the foundation, to pull them through. Coming to you, Mariam, and coming towards the conclusion of the show, they say that youth activism today is more important than ever before. Do you agree with that?
Yes, exactly. I agree with the importance of youth, and that it is. I just want to say that it needs to be directed in a particular direction, in a particular way, else the situation can, go to word south. The youth is like a stock market. You need to invest on the strong shares, which will, like eventually stabilize the market, and then it's like a win-win situation for like everyone. In contemporary era, the youth activism is much important because of the dilemma of our country, is that our youth doesn't have any idea or that what they have to do in the near future or in long-term future. The career counselors and the youth activism both go side by side and complement each other. So hence, youth need to know that their rights, what are their rights, what are their duties, and what is their role in the society. And there must be some platforms which should guide them, I think.
Right, and I think in this regard it's very important that we must train young people like you out there to set their own agenda and also to frame their own message. So coming towards the conclusion of the show, Hassan, tell us that what is the message that you would want to give to other young people like you, because I do think that you are that one person people would look up to, because you've had this momentum of constantly empowering young people in Pakistan. So how do you feel that more of people like yourself should come forward and in turn carry on with this momentum?
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. I'm sure the young people of Pakistan have much greater people than myself to look up to.
No, but you're the one who's here on the show. So of course you get that credit.
If there is one thing I would like to say to them, though, it is to disregard these societal barriers and shackles that often the status quo creates for you, that you have to follow a very specific path, you have to follow a very specific timeline, and maybe a few years from now you might be able to make a difference.
Very rightly
you
put,
can make that difference now. You don't need to go through baptisms by fire to become in the position to make a real change in society. If you take the initiative now, if you decide you want to make a difference, if you decide you want to be the difference, there's nobody in the world
and
who can stop you from doing that.
And you shouldn't set the timelines either. That is something I agree with you.
Exactly. You can begin at your own pace, you can work, you can live, you can thrive on your own time, rather than what anyone else has prescribed for you. So if you do that, Allah will be with you.
I think the same message would apply in your case as well, that set your own agenda and be the own change that you want to see in the world in that regard. And I think in this regard we must not just talk about how youth activism and its potential to actually bring about a change should be just limited at a national level. I think this is something which should also extend at international level. The example that which we were earlier discussing as well with regards to that 16-year-old climate change activist, and you've also done work in this regard. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So with those few steps that we took with the digital media platform, firstly entirely on social media, it progressed to the point that we did get the chance to reach out to federal ministers, we did get the chance to make actual inroads towards policy changes, but also we developed enough connection with like-minded people, other young people who were similarly interested in creating a positive change in society, that a brilliant mentor of ours invited us over to their TV channel in order to speak about the issues that mattered to us. Those were the farmer protests. At the time there were student protests going on, where a number of students were being villainized for just the very simple act of protesting for their rights to not have to give an exam during a deadly pandemic, and they were being demonized by the media at the time. And the fact that young people could get together, like-minded, progressive individuals longing for change, could invite a 20-year-old student onto their platform to speak their truth, that I believe is a testament to the fact that
was very, I think, heartening for you. And of course, credit goes to the person who had that faith in you as well. On that note, I would want to come to you and want to, move towards the conclusion of the show. What reform do you feel as an education needs to be done in the education per se in order to make it more youth inclusive and of course more accepting of youth activism?
Give them a seat at the table, not a metaphorical seat, but a literal seat at the table. They are one of the most important stakeholders we have. And if they don't represent themselves and someone else is representing them in a meeting, let's say, or in a policy meeting or in a hands-on meeting, then I don't think so they're truly represented. And I wanted to say something else as well regarding the society. I think our society really needs to give some breathing room to our youngsters. Let them make their mistakes. Let them fall down on their own and then pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and then learn from those mistakes. And I think that would be really crucial for us to sustain that educational change we are hoping, or social impact change we are hoping to see in the society.
Or for that matter, the whole momentum of activism to carry through that way. Of course, and I think I would agree with you on this, that the society has an extremely important role to play in this regard. And on that note, I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, Hassan.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Maida.
Thank you so much. I think it was one of the most invigorating experiences I had in my life.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Mariam, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about the different, very commendable social initiatives that young Pakistani people have taken in order to bring positive social change in the society, be it in terms of advocating for women's rights, for child issues, for minority rights, or even for that matter, rights of differently abled persons. this is something indeed for which they must be given credit. But in addition to that, I feel that we need to support, we need to normalize, youth activism in whatever way it does exist in our society today, because we need to understand that we can't sideline children and young people. We should allow them to speak about the issues that matter to them, giving them the necessary respect as well as the support that they need from us. On that note, signing off for today. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.